Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here with you. And I want to go today both to the Parsha and then to a poetic interpretation of a verse of the Parsha. So I'm going to start with some words, and I invite you right now to either let them wash over you, pay attention to them, ignore them entirely, but go ahead and settle in into your seat right now, into your physical space. And as Mark already invited, to set aside anything that might be distracting. And we'll start with some text and then get to practice. So this week's Parsha, Tetzaveh, focuses on, so we've been in Exodus with the building of the Mishkan, and this week is about the ritual clothing of the priests, the Kohanim. And I'm focusing on a few verses that talk about creating something called the Breastplate of Decision, or some say judgment, the Choshen. And here, let me just share this with you. There we go. And it starts out in this section, V'asita choshen mishpat, ma'aseh choshev kema'aseh ephod. And you shall make a breastplate of judgment, designer's work. Like the work of the ephod, you shall make it. Gold, indigo, and purple, and crimson, and twisted linen you shall make it. It shall be square and doubled. So we get into this description, this very detailed description of it. A hand span its length and a hand span its width, give you some idea of the size, and you shall set in it a stone inset, 4 rows of stone. So there's going to be 4 rows of 3 stones, 12 stones altogether. 4 rows of stone. The first row is a row of ruby, topaz, and malachite, the first row. And the second row, Hatur Hasheni. The second row, turquoise, sapphire, and amethyst. Hatur Hashlishi. The third row, jacinth, agate, and crystal. Hatur Harevi'i. The fourth row, beryl, carnelian, jasper, framed in gold in their settings. And finally, this description that the stones shall be according to the names of Israel's sons, 12 according to their names, seal engravings, each with its name for 12 tribes. So, actually, I'm going to put this back up because I forgot to point out. So here we have this item described in great detail, and I'm going to take us a turn to this third row, and the third row that is made of maybe jacinth, agate, and crystal. As you read different translations, all these stones are named differently, and scholars have talked about this a lot, and we're kind of guessing, but the main thing is that these are precious, sparkling stones. But this third row, Leshem, Shavo, Ve'achlama, becomes part of a poem. This is a poem called a Bakashot. A Bakashot by a Moroccan Paytan, a poet of the 16th century. And it is a Bakashot, which means request. It's a morning prayer. It's about waking up in the morning, and it's a song to the soul. And I'll go ahead and share the words with you here. So it goes on much longer than this, but this is what we're going to sing. And I hope that it is not too distracting. I had too much fun looking up all the different stones. So we have agate and opal and amethyst and jacinth. But the words are what I want to pay attention to here, and it starts with paying attention. Simu lev. In Hebrew, simu lev means pay attention. But if we take a literal translation of that, it's like put your heart in it. Or in Hebrew, lev, which is often called heart, but it's also kind of the seat of the mind. So put your heart mind on the job of attending to this moment. Simu lev el haneshama. Pay heed to your own soul. And here we have that third row on the breastplate of decision, on the choshen. Leshem, shavo, ve'achlama. And here you notice it's a different, there are different stones translated in there. The Paitan goes on, ve'ora ke'or hachama, and takes this illumination of the stones and is comparing this to the metaphor of the illumination of the soul, and that it is as bright as the sun's warm glow, hachama. Shvatayim ke'or haboker, so far brighter than the morning. But it's even far brighter than this translation shows, because shvatayim means that it's 7 times as bright, which is just that hyperbole of many, many times as bright. So just like the morning doesn't stand a candle to the brightness of the soul. And out of that arises for the Paitan, odeh la'el, gratitude. Like todah, odeh la'el, gratitude to God. Levav choker. Choker is about probing, investigating. There's this God that I thank God who probes all hearts. Beran yachad. Kochve boker. So kochve boker, these stars of the morning that are beran yachad. They're singing, but they're singing together. They're singing in unison. So bring this to our meditation practice, this idea of simu lev el haneshama. Pay attention to your soul, but also pay attention to your neshima, your breath. Put your lev, your heart mind, to the job of attending to this moment, to waking up in the morning, waking up in our lives, moment to moment, because we keep going to sleep. And that's just part of being an embodied being. Just ask my dog Yogi. Or if you have a pet. Yeah, I see some, yeah. But the intention here is to wake up. So simu lev al haneshama, pay attention to the soul, pay attention to the breath, because the soul, as the Paitan hints to, the soul is quiet, even shy. And so we need to pay attention over time to begin to notice the illumination of the soul that is already here. It's not a fire we have to make. That illumination, that warmth is already here. And he compares it, of course, to these sparkling precious stones. When we sit, we uncover sometimes that natural equanimity that is already there. Sometimes we can only sit with the intention of noticing that because so many things get in the way. Craving, desire for sensual pleasure, aversion, anger, and just delusion, just confusion. As my friend and teacher Rhonda Rosen says, we humans are endlessly annoyable and endlessly annoying. And that covers up this illumination of the soul. So we engage our senses and notice the stars of the morning. But even more than that, maybe we notice them singing. What kind of listening are we engaging in to notice the stars singing, and maybe notice that they're singing together, that signifying this connection across creation. And in that noticing, perhaps an organic response of gratitude or simply acknowledgement may rise up. This paying attention is the first step towards heartfelt or somatically felt, embodied, felt gratitude, or maybe even just feeling all right, just noticing feeling all right, or as the Buddhists say, noticing the absence of toothache. Noticing the absence of toothache as a catalyst for gratitude. So let's go ahead and sit. Find your seat. And approach this sit as if it's morning. If it's not morning for you, it may be morning for you. As if you've just awoken. Maybe imagine bright sunshine outside. But find your seat, sit in any way that is both relaxed and alert. And I'll share a melody for these words. שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבובך למה, ואורה כאור חכמה, שפתיים כאור הבוקר, הודה לאל לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, חוקרי בוקר. שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבובך למה, ואורה כאור החמה, שפתיים כאור הבוקר, הודה לאל לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, כוכבי בוקר. שימו לב אל הנשמה. Bring your awareness to the breath, haneshima. Here's the inhale and the exhale and the transition in between. Make every part of the breathing process like it's the most important thing. So interesting. Feel the belly expand and contract with each breath throughout the entire inhale and exhale. Notice if there's any feeling of holding on. And to the best of your ability, let that relax. Deeply let be into this bodily feeling of breath. Letting the breath draw you into oneness with it. As if the breath is doing the knowing Let the breath meditate you. And every time the mind begins to wander, as it does, let the feeling of breath draw you back to it. Simu lev. Bring attention, awareness. El haneshama. Making space for that shy, quiet soul to show up. Notice what arises. Making space for whatever is there, perhaps what is tender or raw, but also space for what is all right, the non-toothache. Open to the possibility of gratitude arising, or even just the intention. We'll sit silently together. שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבעובך למה, ואורה כאור החמה, שתיים כאור הבוקר, הודה לאל, לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, חוכבי בוקר. שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבעובך למה, ואורה כאור החמה, שפתיים כאור הבוקר, הודה לאל, לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, חוכבי בוקר.
Thank you so much, Cantor Julie Newman, as always, for leading us so beautifully today in heart-based practice. Friends, we seal the practice as we do every day by offering an opportunity for those in mourning, or if you're observing yahrzeit, or if you're accustomed to participate in Kaddish, to do so, and for the rest of us to be present for you and to extend our compassion and support towards you. You're invited to share the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box, either now or after we recite Kaddish, and I invite those of you who are to join me by rising in body or in spirit. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
Yalma divrach yivutei yalich malchutei. Chayecho yomechon chaye d'kol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman karib.
Amen.
Ehei shmei rabbah
Maya.
Yitbarach v'yishbach v'yiba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei pirusha v'richu v'yelam v'yishata v'shirata v'ushakata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alma v'imru
Amen.
Yehi olama rabba mi shemaya v'chaim yidalenu v'yamlichu Yisrael v'yimru amen.
Amen.
Aseh shalom b'mamam, v'aseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael, v'kol yosei tevel v'imru.
Amen.
Friends, thanks for joining us today. As always, pleasure to be with you and to share our practice together. I want to thank Adi Stein for holding our tech Mishkan, our sanctuary, so beautifully as he does every day. Thank our teacher for today, Cantor Julie Newman. Thank our anonymous sponsor for sponsoring our practice today in honor of the IJS staff and support staff. We're grateful for your support and for honoring us in this beautiful way. For those who are leaving us, we hope to see you tomorrow for practice at the usual time. For those who would like to and are able, you're welcome to stay on for some conversation with Cantor Julie Newman about today's practice. If you have a question you'd like to put to Julie, you can put it in the chat box and try to keep an eye on that. Julie, I see there's a question about whether there's a link to the sheet music and chords for that. I don't know, it's or it's on there's the Piyut website, which that probably,
Yeah,
I don't know.
right.
Is that right?
Yeah, Hasmanella Piyut, or check Piyut North America. And somebody's asking about the author. So the author is Rabbi, I think it's Shemaiah, something like Shemaiah Kossen, Kosson, a Moroccan rabbi of the 16th century. Not very much is known about him.
Um, I wanted to ask you, Julie, if you could explain to people who are not familiar with it, about the toothache.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there's a couple ways of approaching when we pay attention to stuff. Are we like just looking for a litany of all the things that are wrong? So think of me with my what do you call it, clipboard in hand, going through my body. Okay, head fine, neck fine, face fine, arm sore. Let's spend our time there. No, the non-toothache is to notice. Oh, my head is fine. Top of my head feels great. The back of my head feels great. So it's the idea of noticing not only the difficult sensations, but the absence of the sensation. If you've had a toothache, that moment when you're like, oh, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And to give that as much attention as we give the difficult part, the actual pain. And that's part of what we do, is cultivate our ability, our facility to direct our attention in ways that are helpful and wholesome for us, ways that work. So it doesn't mean to push stuff away or keep it hidden or pretend my tooth doesn't hurt, because that tends not to be so useful. But rather to notice my tooth hurts, but my elbow's fine, my knee is fine,
Mm-hmm.
my chest is fine. So that's what
Yeah, that's a beautiful. That's a great description of it. I mean, I guess you're right. It's called, some call it a negativity bias, right, in the mind, where,
Right.
right, guilty as charged right here. If someone asks me how I'm doing, I will notice that kind of instinctively, right? That I will search for instantly gravitate to the kvetch, instead of the gratitude.
Yeah.
But then on top of that, for me at least, there's a judgment on top of that, which, because I don't want to be doing that. I don't find that becoming. I don't find it becoming in others. I don't find it becoming in myself. So I can then have a judgment about that, instead of, that's what happens. I'm, as a human beings, we're kind of programmed that way
Yeah.
to keep ourselves safe, right? To be on the lookout, for danger signs.
Absolutely.
We're not necessarily programmed quite as in the same way to immediately go to the pleasant, or the less vulnerable parts of ourselves.
Right.
So I really appreciated you lifting that up. There's a question from Sandy about, the Choshen Mishpat, the breastplate of judgment. So I thought this was a good opportunity, Julie, to talk a little bit about, there's this whole Torah portion is, it's about the clothing of the priests, and it seems very arcane and archaic and really irrelevant to our lives. But you made it quite relevant, quite present, and stepping into, applying these teachings about the priests and their garments, and in particular this aspect of the garment, um, the breastplate of judgment, reminds us that we have that too, and we have that, those rows of those jewels, and then the liturgy that you brought, that beautiful poem, liturgical poem. It's called a piyut, about these beautiful gemstones that gleam and shine and that are reminders of our soul. Wow, that goes, suddenly you take a text that looks like, what has that got to do with my life? To, wow, that's a reminder that I have a soul. That's a reminder that my soul is shining. It's just so beautiful. What do you make about it?
Well, one of the things that works for me in these parts of the Torah that are kind of lists or directions, these really detailed things. It's like I remember for myself, what do I make lists of? What do I need to know in detail? And that is things that are important to me. So just the fact that it is a kind of a list is like, oh, that might be important. And it's about it causes me to bring a different quality of attention than a narrative. It's just a different quality of attention. And so that's on the meta level in terms of reading it. But then in the text itself, I think that is also, look at Aaron is putting on all these prayer clothes, so to speak. Both for the Kohen themselves, but also for the people who see the Kohen. It is to make significant for everybody through our senses of our eyes, maybe through sense of smell, but just to bring our senses into it and to literally draw our attention. And
to draw our attention. And so somebody requested that we put the words back up. So I just put it back up there because it's such a beautiful, beautiful liturgical poem. You could just take it line by line. That first line, like you just said, bring attention to. The Hebrew phrase for that is simu lev, which literally means like, bring your heart or place your heart. Give your heart attention to your soul. So, enough right there, Dayenu, right?
Right.
Remember, you have a soul. So the breastplate of judgment could remind us of that. What is that soul? That soul is as bright as, it's just so appreciative. That soul is as bright as the sun, right?
Right.
And then there's that phrase that you pointed out that describes God as levav choker, the one who investigates the heart, which brings us back around to the attending heart, right? That bringing attention to the heart actually sounds, from this, we can really experience that heart searching itself as God moving through us, investigating the heart.
Right. And these last two phrases bring in the idea that we are not alone in this. That we are connected both to somebody else is checking our heart too, because our soul is of note, is worthy, and also the natural world in kind of an unnatural way, but that creation, that we are connecting it both to God and creation, this investigation, and it's just kind of a celebration. Of here we are in this moment, and gratitude that may just organically rise up out of that. Not you should be grateful, if you were good enough, you'd be grateful. If you were really, a good student or whatever, you'd be grateful. No, it's just like, and just kind of from that, it's an orientation. It's an orientation to the world, to the moment.
Mm-hmm. I want to make sure we have a couple of minutes to have a reprise, if you don't mind, of the piyuts. Just giving you a heads up, that would be wonderful to bring us into the day. And just like the last question, wait a minute. Yeah, there's really nice stuff here. Thank you, Cheryl, about the stones representing each tribe.
Right.
Different facet of the whole. All these different qualities. Thanks for sharing that, Cheryl. There's a question about the Choshen Mishpat from Janet. The difference, you called it also the breastplate of decision. Can you explain the difference between judgment and decision?
So the word is mishpat, which is often judgment. It's about judging. But there's the critical judgment, but there's also using information for wholesome action. That's how I'm looking at it. I know there are scholars who look at it differently, because this breastplate is also seen as a way that God is sort of interacting and communicating with the Kohen Gadol. And so it's a way of God saying, telling the Israelites what they need to be doing. And there's more on that, but that's what I have to say about it right now. Mark, do you have anything to add there?
I guess I'm thinking, there's like this whole, strange ritual with, the priests using that to discern. For me, I guess here's my take on it for myself. It's not really, I don't know that this is what it means, but it helps orient me to how I deal with the aspect of myself that is judging.
Mm.
And so my takeaway today from your teaching, Julie, is that that I hope that I can be conscious of not only my soul, but everyone else's soul when I am in the process of making a decision or judging myself or others, that I bear in mind that beautiful imagery of the light of the soul. And so that's where I would go with that, because it's not that I want to do away with judgment or decisions. That's part of life, and it's a sacred part too. But I want it to take place through the filter of being aware of that light that you brought for us today.
Right. So discernment rather than judgment. And when we were talking about before that the natural first response is often one of constriction, one of like critical judgment, and then followed up by critical judgment on myself for having critical judgment. And I think for me, part of my practice is like not to stop that, because that is not going to stop. But can I then follow it up with compassion for myself? Which means that judgment, I always use this like the tight fist. That's the judgment, the really tight, constricted fist. But can I then find through practice that can ease and open and not grip me so tightly? It's like, okay, I just that's going to happen. I'm not going to act on it. I'm going to bring some compassion, take a breath, and then act in a more wholesome, wise, maybe a little bit more wise way when I can.
You want to take us
Mark,
out? You want to bring it into, help us bring it into the rest of our day? Thank you.
שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבובר חלמה, ואורה כאור החמה, שפתיים כאור הבוקר, עוד אליי לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, חוקר בוקר. שימו לב אל הנשמה, לשם שבובר חלמה, ואורה כאור החמה, שפתיים כאור הבוקר, עוד אליי לבב חוקר, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, ברן יחד, חוקרי
Thank you so much, Julie. as always.
Thanks, Mark.
Big gift you give us every time. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you. Thanks to our anonymous sponsor for today. Thanks, Adi. And hope to see you all tomorrow, same time. Be well, everyone.